Donald Trump. How one outsider shook the entire political establishment. There's a moment in every revolution when the old guard realizes they've already lost. For the American political establishment, that moment came on a Tuesday night in November 2016. But the earthquake had started 18 months earlier on a golden escalator in Manhattan. One man, no political experience, no script, no fear, and he was about to tear down an empire that had stood for generations. This is the story of how an outsider didn't just win. He obliterated the rulebook and forced everyone else to play his game. Donald Trump was never supposed to happen. The political establishment had spent decades perfecting their system. You paid your dues. You rose through the ranks. You learned to speak in carefully focus-grouped phrases. You kissed the right rings, shook the right hands, took money from the right donors. That's how you became president. That's how it always worked. But what nobody expected was that someone would simply refuse to play. June 16, 2015. Trump Tower. The cameras were rolling, but this wasn't another real estate announcement or another reality TV stunt. Trump walked down that escalator and declared war on the entire political class. He called Mexican immigrants rapists. He promised to build a wall and make Mexico pay for it. He attacked China, attacked trade deals, attacked politicians from both parties. Within 20 minutes, he'd violated every rule of political correctness that candidates had been following for decades. The establishment's response was immediate: laughter. The Republican National Committee dismissed him as a sideshow. Political consultants called him a joke. Cable news treated him as a ratings boost, nothing more. Surely voters would see through this buffoon. Surely the system would correct itself like it always did. Nequili memento, they made their first fatal mistake. They didn't understand that Trump wasn't running for president like a politician. He was running like a brand. And brands don't apologize. Brands don't walk back statements. Brands double down. When attacked for his comments about Mexican immigrants, Trump didn't issue a carefully worded clarification. He went harder. He brought victims of crimes committed by undocumented immigrants to his rallies. He made the controversy bigger, louder, impossible to ignore. And something incredible happened. His poll numbers went up. The establishment was baffled. This couldn't be real. But Trump understood something they'd forgotten. Millions of Americans were tired of politicians who said one thing in private and another in public. They were tired of carefully parsed statements that meant nothing. They were tired of politicians who apologized for everything. Trump's refusal to back down wasn't a bug. It was the feature. By July 2015, Trump was leading in polls. The establishment still wasn't worried. It was summer. Real voters weren't paying attention yet. Once the debate started, once people saw him next to real politicians, this would end. The system had survived populist upstarts before. It would survive Trump. But what nobody expected was that Trump would turn the debates into performance art. August 2015. The first Republican debate. 10 candidates on stage. Trump center stage because he was leading in polls, something that infuriated career politicians who'd spent years preparing. The first question went to Trump. Fox News moderator Megyn Kelly asked about his history of calling women fat pigs and disgusting animals. It was designed to be a kill shot. A serious candidate would have apologized, pivoted, shown contrition. Trump attacked her instead. He defended his comments. He implied she was biased. The audience gasped. Surely this was disqualifying. Surely Republican primary voters, supposedly values-focused conservatives, would reject this crude behavior. His poll numbers went up again. Trump had discovered something extraordinary. In the age of social media and 24-hour news, controversy is currency. Every outrageous statement guaranteed wall-to-wall coverage. While other candidates spent millions on TV ads, Trump got billions in free media just by being provocative. He dominated every news cycle. CNN would break away from actual news to show an empty Trump podium waiting for him to speak. No other candidate could compete with that. The Republican establishment mobilized. Surely they could stop him in Iowa. Ted Cruz won Iowa. See? The system works. Trump is done. But Trump came back and crushed the competition in New Hampshire. Then Nevada. Then the SEC primary on Super Tuesday. State after state fell. And the establishment watched in horror as their party was hijacked. They tried everything. Attack ads painting Trump as a con artist. Donors funded opposition research. Mitt Romney gave a speech calling Trump a fraud. Conservative intellectuals wrote open letters. The National Review dedicated an entire issue to stopping Trump. Nothing worked. Every attack made him stronger. He was the outsider fighting the corrupt establishment, and every establishment attack proved his point. Nequili memento, the Republican Party realized they'd lost control. By May 2016, Trump had won the nomination. Jeb Bush, the presumptive frontrunner who'd raised over $100 million, had been destroyed. Marco Rubio, the fresh face of the party, had been humiliated. Ted Cruz, the conservative favorite, had been beaten. 16 candidates, collectively decades of political experience, billions in campaign infrastructure. And they'd all lost to a reality TV star who'd never held office. But the real test was coming. Hillary Clinton was the most prepared candidate in modern history. Former First Lady, Senator, Secretary of State. She had the entire Democratic establishment behind her. She had $1 billion campaign. She had every advantage. Trump was a novice who barely had a campaign organization. He was outspent, outorganized, outmatched in every traditional metric. The polls showed Clinton winning easily. Political scientists gave Trump a 2% chance. The establishment breathed easier. The system would work. American voters would make the responsible choice. Trump had conquered the Republican Party, but surely he couldn't win a general election. Surely the adults would finally stop this madness. But what nobody expected was that Trump had learned to weaponize everything. The more the establishment lined up against him, the stronger his outsider narrative became. Every newspaper endorsement of Clinton proved the media was rigged. Every CEO who opposed him proved the wealthy elite feared him. Every foreign leader who criticized him proved globalists wanted to stop him. Trump turned the entire weight of the establishment into rocket fuel for his campaign. And he found the one issue the establishment had completely missed: forgotten Americans in forgotten towns. While Democrats focused on diversity and social issues, while Republicans focused on tax cuts and deregulation, Trump spoke to factory workers who'd lost their jobs to globalization. He spoke to communities ravaged by opioids that politicians ignored. He spoke to people who felt like their country was leaving them behind. He promised to bring back coal, to bring back steel, to bring back manufacturing. Economists said it was impossible. The establishment said he was lying. But voters in Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin didn't care what economists said. Someone was finally promising to fight for them. October 2016. The Access Hollywood tape dropped. Trump caught on a hot mic bragging about sexually assaulting women. Grab them by the pussy. The Republican establishment thought this was finally it. They started abandoning him. Paul Ryan said he wouldn't campaign with Trump. Multiple senators rescinded their endorsements. Surely this would end his campaign. Surely there were still lines that couldn't be crossed. But what nobody expected was that Trump supporters didn't care. They'd already decided the establishment was corrupt. One more scandal didn't matter. Trump held a press conference with women who'd accused Bill Clinton of sexual assault. He attacked Hillary for enabling her husband. He fought back harder than any normal politician would dare. And he survived. 3 weeks later, 11 days before the election, FBI Director James Comey announced he was reopening the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails. The establishment panicked. Clinton's poll numbers dropped. Trump surged. But the polls still showed Clinton winning. The models still predicted a comfortable victory. The establishment still believed the system would work. November 8, 2016. Election night. The impossible happened. Wisconsin, red. Michigan, red. Pennsylvania, red. States that hadn't voted Republican in decades flipped. The Rust Belt, the blue wall, the supposedly impenetrable firewall of the Democratic Party, crumbled. By 2:30 a.m., Donald Trump was president-elect of the United States. The establishment went into shock. How had every expert been wrong? How had every model failed? How had every poll missed this? The answer was uncomfortable. They'd been living in a bubble. They'd convinced themselves that politics still worked the way it used to. That experience mattered. That qualifications mattered. That norms mattered. Trump proved that none of it mattered anymore. Nequili memento, the entire political establishment realized their world had ended. The morning after the election, editorial boards scrambled to explain what happened. Think tanks launched studies. Journalists wrote introspective pieces about how they'd missed the story. But Trump wasn't interested in their analysis. He was interested in revenge. January 20th, 2017. Inauguration Day. Previous presidents had used their inaugural address to unite the country, to speak of shared values and common purpose. Trump gave the darkest inaugural address in modern history. He spoke of American carnage. He attacked the politicians standing right behind him, saying they'd enriched themselves while the people suffered. He promised that this American carnage stops right here and stops right now. The establishment was horrified. This wasn't presidential. This wasn't how it was done. But Trump had never cared how it was done. He was there to burn it all down. His first weeks in office were a systematic attack on every norm. He put his daughter and son-in-law in White House positions. He refused to divest from his businesses. He attacked federal judges on Twitter. He called the media the enemy of the people. He fired the acting attorney general for refusing to defend his travel ban. Every tradition, every norm, every unwritten rule of presidential conduct was shattered. The establishment pushed back. Career officials leaked damaging stories. Diplomats wrote dissent cables. Intelligence officials pushed back on his Russia statements. The bureaucracy, the so-called deep state, tried to constrain this outsider who didn't understand how things worked. But what nobody expected was that Trump would turn this resistance into a weapon too. Every leak proved the deep state was trying to undermine him. Every critical story proved the media was fake news. Every investigation proved the establishment was desperate to overturn the election. Trump reframed every conflict as corrupt elites versus the people. And his supporters ate it up. The Russia investigation should have been his downfall. A special counsel investigating whether his campaign colluded with Russia to win the election. The establishment thought this would be Trump's Watergate. Mueller was a decorated Marine, a former FBI director, a by-the-book professional. Surely he would uncover the truth and the system would work. But Trump attacked Mueller relentlessly. He called it a witch hunt hundreds of times. He attacked the FBI, the Justice Department, the intelligence community. He undermined institutions that had been sacrosanct for generations. And his base believed him over them. When the Mueller report came out in 2019, it was a Rorschach test. The report documented extensive Russian interference and over 100 contacts between the Trump campaign and Russian-linked individuals. It outlined 10 episodes of potential obstruction of justice. But Mueller declined to conclude Trump had committed a crime, citing Justice Department policy against indicting a sitting president. Trump declared total exoneration. The establishment pointed to the evidence of wrongdoing. But by then, Americans lived in two separate realities. Trump's supporters believed he'd been vindicated. His opponents believed he'd escaped justice. There was no shared truth anymore. And that fracture was Trump's doing. The first impeachment came in 2019. Trump had pressured Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden. He'd withheld military aid to force a foreign government to interfere in American elections. The evidence was overwhelming. Multiple officials testified under oath. Trump himself released a transcript confirming the key facts. The House impeached him. The establishment thought this would finally break his support. Surely Republican senators, faced with clear evidence of abuse of power, would put country over party. Surely the system would work this time. But what nobody expected was how completely Trump had captured the Republican Party. Only one Republican senator voted to convict. Mitt Romney, the party's 2012 nominee, stood alone. Everyone else acquitted Trump. They knew he was guilty. Many said so privately. But they were terrified of Trump's base, terrified of being primaried, terrified of tweets attacking them. The outsider had become the party. The establishment had bent the knee. Trump emerged from impeachment more powerful than before. He'd been accused, tried, and acquitted. Now he felt invincible. He purged officials who'd testified against him. He installed loyalists throughout the government. The outsider wasn't outside anymore. He'd taken over from within. Then came COVID-19, a pandemic that killed over 1 million Americans. The establishment thought this would expose Trump's incompetence. Surely voters would reject a president who downplayed a deadly virus, who promoted unproven treatments, who turned public health into a culture war. November 2020. Trump lost to Joe Biden by 7 million votes. Finally, the establishment breathed. The system had corrected itself. The outsider was out. Democracy had survived. It was over. Nequili memento, they celebrated too soon. Trump refused to concede. He claimed massive fraud without evidence. He filed dozens of lawsuits and lost them all. He pressured state officials to overturn results. He organized fake electors. He pressured his vice president to reject certified votes. And when all of that failed, he incited his supporters to attack the Capitol on January 6th. The establishment watched in horror as a mob stormed Congress. This was the logical endpoint of 4 years of norm-shattering. Trump had spent years teaching his supporters that the system was rigged, that institutions were corrupt, that violence might be necessary. And on January 6th, they acted on that teaching. Trump was impeached again. This time, 10 Republicans voted to impeach. Surely the Senate would convict now. Surely attempting a coup was finally over the line. Surely the Republican Party would seize this chance to rid themselves of Trump forever. 43 Republican senators voted to acquit. Even after January 6th. Even after watching the attack live. Even after fearing for their own lives. They acquitted him. The outsider had so thoroughly captured the party that they couldn't break free even when he tried to overthrow the government. But what nobody expected was that this still wouldn't be the end. Trump left office in January 2021 as a pariah. Social media banned him. Corporate donors abandoned him. The establishment thought he'd fade away. He was 74 years old, twice impeached, blamed for an insurrection. Surely this was finally over. Surely the Republican Party would move on. Instead, Trump's grip on the party only tightened. He endorsed candidates in primaries and most won. Those who voted to impeach him were targeted. Many retired rather than face his wrath. Republican politicians made pilgrimages to Mar-a-Lago, Trump's Florida resort, to kiss the ring. The outsider had become the kingmaker. And then the indictments came. 4 of them. 91 felony charges. Classified documents. Election interference. Hush money. The establishment thought this would finally disqualify him. Surely voters wouldn't nominate a criminally indicted candidate. Surely Republicans would choose someone else. But what nobody expected was that Trump would turn his prosecutions into his greatest strength yet. Every indictment became proof of persecution. Every charge proved the establishment was desperate to stop him. His poll numbers rose with each indictment. His fundraising exploded. Republican primary voters rallied around him harder than ever. The outsider being attacked by the system was the most powerful narrative he'd ever had. In May 2024, a New York jury convicted Trump on all 34 counts. He became the first former president ever convicted of crimes. The establishment celebrated. Surely this would end his campaign. Surely American voters wouldn't elect a convicted felon. His supporters dismissed it as political persecution. Independent voters barely moved. Trump kept campaigning like nothing had happened. The conviction meant to disqualify him barely registered. November 2024. Donald Trump wins the presidency again. He defeats Kamala Harris decisively. He wins the popular vote for the first time. He flips multiple swing states. Republicans take the Senate. At 78 years old, the outsider returns to power stronger than ever. The establishment is stunned again. How did this happen? How did a twice impeached, criminally convicted, adjudicated fraud win again? The answer is the same as it was in 2016. They still don't understand what Trump represents. Trump isn't just a politician. He's a complete rejection of the political establishment itself. Every institution that opposed him, every norm he violated, every scandal that should have ended him, all of it proved to his supporters that he was the real deal. The more the establishment fought him, the more his base believed in him. Nequili memento, the establishment finally understood they'd lost permanently. Trump had proven that the old rules don't apply anymore. You don't need political experience. You don't need donors. You don't need the media. You don't need to follow norms. You don't even need to win the first time. You just need a loyal base, a talent for media manipulation, and the willingness to fight dirtier than your opponents can stomach. The transformation Trump caused is total. Look at the Republican Party now. They've abandoned free trade, deficit concerns, interventionist foreign policy, all the positions they held for decades. The party of Reagan is dead. It's the party of Trump now, and it will be for a generation. But it's not just Republicans. Trump changed Democrats too. They've had to become more combative, more willing to use power aggressively, more focused on their base over persuading moderates. The entire tone of American politics shifted because of one outsider. The media landscape is unrecognizable. Trust in journalism has collapsed. Americans exist in separate information ecosystems. Objective facts matter less than partisan narratives. Trump didn't create this entirely, but he accelerated it and weaponized it like no one before. International relations changed. America's allies no longer fully trust U.S. commitments. Adversaries know they can exploit American divisions. The post-World War II order that America built is fracturing. One outsider shook the entire global system. But what nobody can predict is whether this change is permanent. Some believe American politics will eventually revert to normal. That Trump is an aberration, a unique product of unique circumstances. That once he's gone, the old norms will reassert themselves. That the establishment will rebuild. Others believe Trump fundamentally broke American politics. That he showed future politicians a new playbook. That the norms he shattered won't be restored. That the establishment he defeated won't recover. That American politics has been permanently transformed into something darker, more divisive, more authoritarian. The evidence suggests the pessimists are right. Trump didn't just win twice. He survived everything the system threw at him and came back stronger. He showed that you can break every rule, violate every norm, commit crimes, incite insurrection, and still win. That's a lesson that won't be forgotten. Future politicians, both Republican and Democrat, are studying what Trump did. Some will try to imitate his tactics. Others will try to prevent anyone from using them again. But the knowledge exists now. The playbook is written. One outsider proved you can shake the entire establishment if you're willing to fight dirty enough. Trump's legacy isn't his policy accomplishments. It's not the judges he appointed or the laws he passed. His legacy is proving that the American political establishment was a paper tiger. That all the norms, all the institutions, all the rules that supposedly governed American politics could be swept aside by someone shameless enough, bold enough, and media-savvy enough. He showed that political experience is a liability, not an asset. That the establishment is weak when challenged directly. That voters care more about authenticity, even fake authenticity, than qualifications. That controversy is better than obscurity. That loyalty matters more than truth. These lessons have been learned. They can't be unlearned. And that means the America we're entering is fundamentally different from the America that existed before Trump. The establishment thought they were gatekeepers of power. Trump proved they were just obstacles to be cleared. They thought their endorsements mattered. Trump proved voters didn't care. They thought their institutions were strong. Trump proved they were fragile. They thought democracy would protect itself. Trump proved it needed protection. One man, an outsider with no political experience. A reality TV star who broke every rule. And he didn't just win. He completely restructured American politics in his image. The establishment tried to stop him with every tool they had. They failed. and now they have to live in the world he created. This is how one outsider shook the entire political establishment. Not by being smarter or more qualified, but by understanding that, in modern America, the establishment's power was always an illusion. It only worked if everyone agreed to play by the rules. The moment someone refused, the whole structure collapsed. Trump refused, and the establishment discovered they had no answer. They could write op-eds. They could investigate. They could impeach. They could indict. None of it mattered, because Trump had something they didn't. He understood that, in the age of social media and hyperpartisanship, the old rules were already dead. He was just willing to say it out loud. The political establishment spent decades building a system where they controlled who could access power. They had gatekeepers and guardrails and norms and expectations. It was all designed to keep outsiders out, to ensure only establishment-approved candidates could win. Trump proved it was all built on sand. One strong gust and it all blew away. And now, as he prepares for his second term, the establishment faces a terrifying reality. They have no idea how to stop him this time. They tried everything and failed. The outsider isn't outside anymore. He's conquered the system from within, and he's planning to use that power to remake American politics permanently. This is the story of how one man shook an entire establishment, how he exposed their weakness, how he broke their rules, how he survived their attacks, and how he proved that, in modern America, the outsider who fights dirty enough will always beat the establishment that fights fair. The earthquake started on a golden escalator in 2015, but the aftershocks will be felt for decades, because Donald Trump didn't just win the presidency. He ended an era, and no one knows what comes next in the world he created.